Greetings, I'm Gerd Leonhard, futurist. I'm here in beautiful Cape Town, South Africa, with my friend Anton Musgrave, also futurist at Future World. And we're doing a new show, which you've seen in some of the other ones, I do hope. It's called The World by 2030. And there's one really burning topic we're going to address today, and that is the future of education. I kick it off by saying one of my favorite memes is, if you work like a robot will take your job. And if you learn like a robot, you'll never have a job. Let's start with that. So what is happening with education? Is it future fit for 2030? This is, of course, a rhetorical question.
The answer is clearly no. But I think I was speaking at an educational conference in Barcelona a short while ago, and I said to the audience of educators from all over the world, you folks have the most important job on the planet, because if you mess up and don't get this right, it's the end of us. If we don't prepare young people with the skills, attributes, virtues to cope in a world of robots and artificial intelligence and so forth, then what have we got left to look forward to? And I think if I go back to my own school career many decades ago, as yours probably too, Gerd, and the way we were taught, what we were taught, how we were taught, just doesn't prepare young people for what they face in reality. Social media has made it more complicated. It's made it much tougher for young people. How do they learn to be discerning? How do they filter out the noise? How do you stimulate curiosity? How do you think as a systems theorist about the complexities and interconnections in the world between different things, seemingly separate, but actually all interconnected? These are not things that we were taught at school. And I think today still, there's some superb institutions preparing young kids, but in essence, it's not happening. And we need to reboot that. Control, Alt, Delete.
Yeah.
Reset the system.
Yeah, I think that when I look back at my own education, which was first University of Bonn and then Berklee College of Music, you can safely say that I learned by downloading information. Or in the case of music, I learned by memorizing the scales, memorizing the songs, and so downloading for later. And what we have today is that downloading today's information is first impossible because there's too much. A lot of the information that we all have is old, and like old case studies for MBA and so on. And really what we need to be doing is learn not just in case, but just in time. And for our whole life. Imagine, we're at the end of our learning period here, but if you're 30 today, you're going to keep learning and learning and learning and reinventing and making new jobs. Research shows clearly, you've seen all of that, like 70% of the future jobs in 2030 don't even exist yet.
Correct.
They're only sort of a little bit here and there, just like social media now has 21 million people working in social media. Didn't exist 10 years ago. And many other research says most of the new work, if it's not hands-on things, will be in the cloud, will be virtual, remote, and mixed mode, right? So our kids will have to make their own job. They will have to make their own career. They have to invent what they're all about. They're going to have to collaborate. They're going to have to constantly shift. Everything that we've known about work and education is no longer going to apply. Right? And so really what's happening with education, and Buckminster Fuller, futurist, said this very fittingly, we go to school so that we can be de-geniused. We can have the genius removed from our kids. Systematically, with great effort. And this is really what has been happening in a lot of schools. There are differences. For example, we have the Waldorf School and the Anthroposophical School and a lot of really amazing schools in Finland that do this. In Canada, we need different kinds of degrees, professional certification, lifelong learning, experience-based learning, and all that stuff is really dawning on people. The problem is, of course, education is run in many countries by the state. Right? And the state has certain rules and guidelines as to what has to be achieved. For example, tests, right?
Well, I was going to say, how long do you think it takes any government or an educational system to change the pedagogy or the syllabus? It's years. And in the world we live in, we don't have years. And then there's another problem. It takes 5 years to change the syllabus. And then the people you're asking to implement the new syllabus, the teachers, are of a generation that's not prone to rapid change.
Yeah, that's why I think the next Google may very well first be in climate tech and then in education. Because education is something that we can easily free from all of these circumstances, and we can also think of new ways of spending our money. Like many people in America say now, I send off my kids to get an MBA for 200 grand whatever it's going to cost.
And have their debt or
maybe I'll just invest in their startup, or I send them traveling to India. And I think, of course, in an ideal world, would be really both. And this is one of the really, really big challenges when we talk about AI and automation and job. Our kids have to be prepared to be more human, not less. And so we don't want a 4-year-old playing on the iPad all day long and trying to figure out what movie to watch. We want them to make a sandcastle,
Yeah. The point is, and play on the iPad and understand the power of coding.
Yeah.
For example.
Both, really. But coding is one of those things where I always say, okay, that's obviously great to know. It would have helped me greatly to know that. But easy coding, primitive coding is done by machines. I
was going to say, the need to know it is not to do it.
Right.
It's to understand what the machine is doing and what you can ask the machine to do, and to understand when the machine is giving you garbage out. Right.
I mean,
I did a very interesting project recently, Gerd, with some schooling children in Boston. And I asked them at the end of 2 days of conversation workshops and so forth to make a movie, just a 3-minute movie, to the head of their school to say, what do you want to leave with when you graduate after 12 years of school education? And it was fascinating. Every one of them said to me, leave me with a set of human virtues. Teach me, guide me, counsel me to have empathy. Now, empathy didn't feature much in my school. I went to one of those church schools, and it was many decades ago. So if you didn't do your homework, it was, a little bit of physical abuse, if you like, in today's world. But we were never taught empathy. And empathy is about perspective. And perspective is one of the most important things as we enter this new, very exciting world. We were never taught it. It was English, geography, math, science, Latin. Can you imagine? Because Latin was really important because
I got whacked with a ruler too.
Exactly.
But I think this are like, when we look at today's landscape of education, a lot of these things aren't really so much about skills, but about character, like building your character. For example, to be resilient is not really a skill; it's a character. Like you can make a lot out of nothing. To be resilient and agile, these are character things, and they're not like a skill of learning a spreadsheet or something. And I think our kids have to have character skills. They have to understand the truth. They have to talk to other people. They have to be communicative. They have to be entrepreneurs. They have to know how to make stuff up.
And by the way, you need to be rewarded for failing, right? In school, you're penalized for failing. And I often say to companies as well, what's your failure budget? What's your risk budget? In other words, it's a metaphor for saying, are you experimenting, trying new things? And school kids, young people need to have that same sense of adventure. Let me experiment. Let me try new things. It's going to fail. So you get good grades for trying something different with curiosity and passion and application. That's important. But if you fail, it's fine. And you get marked for that. You get credits for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are fundamentally broken. And if you're looking at what the efforts to change that, for example, in Finland, we now have schools that don't have classes anymore. They have subject matters.
Well, even the subject matters are not English geography, right?
No, but they're like big subjects. For example,
like coffee or shop management.
Sustainability, for example. They say, okay, we're going to talk about the green future, the green world, and then there's science, technology, diplomacy,
math, negotiation.
There's all of that and the class studies that for the half year and they're not chopped up by different themes, and also they don't have tests. They have to basically show in some way by doing a project, for example, or making a film or something, or setting up a company that they've learned something. And I think that would be very, very useful. And I always say we have to go back to the human-only skills. The human-only skills, and there are thousands, which, like ethical evaluation, negotiation, creativity, intuition, imagination, long list. And what we have successfully done in the last 20 years is eradicated in most countries all of that stuff that was ephemeral, as it's called, right? Music, art, sports, ethics, everything has been eradicated towards STEM, science, technology,
engineering, and math.
I'm a great proponent that we should all study that and be aware of it, and that's no doubt really important. But it will not save the day or the future by having more engineers or more mathematicians or scientists. This is just something that is obviously a need when we have more computers and more technology. But really, in the end, our main jobs are going to be where the machines can't be, right? And that's the human-only job. So in an ideal world, I would say every scientist and engineer must study empathy, compassion.
Right? You remember the Google project, Project Aristotle, I think it was called, Why do some teams in Google, remember everyone in Google is super smart on STEM skills, why do some teams always outperform others? And the answer was they have STEAM skills: science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. And the arts was philosophy, collaboration, negotiation, empathy, working with humans. And those teams always outperform the other super equally smart people. And so I think there was a wonderful cover of the Harvard Business Review in 2015 on HR. And there was a picture of a bomb. And it said, HR should be blown up. And I think it should, in the old way of doing HR, right? The name itself is a problem in the modern world. But I think education as well should be blown up. And we should reimagine completely. How do we prepare our species for relevance in the world of 2030 and beyond? And it's going to be fundamentally different to the way we are today. The good news is that all around the developing world, with increasing connectivity, and today in 2030, everyone is connected with an intelligent device close by that's cheap and affordable, if not free. And so the content is available. But how do you think and behave and act as a human in a way that's valuable for society 5.0? And I think we can do that. But we need to blow up all the old models.
Well, I think part of the challenge is that, we think of digital education or online training as a great solution, which I think it is, hardly speaking. But in the end, learning is something that's based on human things like engagement, experiences, relationships. And it's very hard to build a relationship with a screen or learning remotely in such a way, which is mostly about lower level knowledge, not intuitive knowledge. And the way that we learn the best is with others, actually going through the motion.
Yes. The process of
I studied philosophy, religion, music, I don't know, 15 years of my life. But I think I learned the most when I did the internet startup. In 1 week I had to learn about equity deals and
grumpy employees.
Yeah, that was all right there. And I learned all these things. So I think this is one of the really, really difficult points for governments to embrace, is how to redo that to be future fit, because the resistance is huge to do away with this understanding that science is the ticket. Of course, science is the ticket. Nobody wants to reduce science, but we shouldn't be reducing the humanities, as a result, which we have been doing in many places. And also we teach our kids and our students in our, from elementary school to be obedient sort of functionaries. And when you go to a lot of business schools, I teach in some business schools, it's just the level of wanted function is it's not about functioning. A computer functions, a computer is efficient.
But it's because it's been systematically droned out of them. And I think another one of my personal bugbears in education, Gerd, is this concept of resilience, right? I mean, how do you teach a kid that it's fine to lose a three-legged race on sports day when you don't let them run anymore because you're concerned they may not cope if they were to lose? It's crazy, right? I mean, I say to my daughter, who's a chartered accountant, 30 years old, I say to her, you will likely be retrenched 5 times or more in your life. You will need to start again. You will get knocked down, and you need to have the ability as a human to stand up, face the issue, and move forwards positively. And yet we're creating these young kids where we remove the risk of failure. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that probably that will get worse before it gets better with education, as we're seeing that essentially we're educating them for unemployment. So you're getting out with the MBA, you spend a couple of $100,000 on getting the MBA, you have high expectations, and you come out and you realize, what, case studies? No case studies. Just
do stuff.
Do stuff here and come up with something. And the other thing is going to be, clearly, as work becomes just something that we do as a calling, or something that we do less than we do it now, and less of a domination of life, it's also, education is about educating ourselves of what we want to be, not how much money we make. Compared to our generation, we study hard, we get a good degree, we work for a great company, we rise to the top, we make money.
And then you retire.
Right, and that. We retire if you're lucky, otherwise you die, from a heart attack.
But the model is broken, right? So the question is, how do you, as an adult, having learned some valuable things and having done stuff, how do you then unlearn the things that made you successful in the past? You now need to unlearn to create new capabilities to stay relevant in the future.
That's why I think the millennials, the Gen Y, are currently going through a lot of pain in realizing what they come from, was not that useful to create their future.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to be completely different for the Zillennials from the Gen Z and even before that, because they grew up in a digital world which opened up their dimensions to being a global citizen.
And they're used to these rapid cycles of change.
And they can easily say, okay, clearly I'm going to find a job if I focus on this, and they can also re-qualify. For the millennials, it's much harder because they know a world that's offline. To a large degree, they still remember
That's
that.
where we came from originally.
And they know a world of safe jobs and stuff, and they're disoriented. And we must fix this problem to get the millennials to go back into an education process to get them ready for the future, because they're going to have all the money and the power in most countries in the world in the next 5 years. And so that is crucial to me to get them back to education.
And I think the issue for parents is to have conversations with your kids around the dinner table about the future context in which they will be operating, and ask yourself, what skills will my kids need in that world, the 2030 world, to stay relevant and valuable? And let's not forget the word happy. I mean, that's what humanist is all about. Let's be happy,
Well, I think education is such a powerful topic. We're going to talk about it again. I think this is one of the cornerstones of how we can create the good future. Because I always talk about the good future requires us to teach our next generation how to invent it. So anyway, this concludes another episode of The Future by 2030 with Anton Musgrave in Cape Town and Gerd Leonhard also in Cape Town right now, generally in Zurich. Thanks very much for tuning in, and may the future be bright and live long and prosper.